show you how a web service basically works, right? Assume that you want to call your friend, right? So what and all you need for that? Yeah. So to call your friend, you need first the number to find the person to be called. Second, you need a calling device, that is phone, to transport the data. Third, you need a common language to speak so that you both can understand. So here, these three parts are applicable to a web service also, right? So you need to have the number of your friend to find him and call him, and then you need a phone which will transport your voice to your friend, and you need a common language like English to go and talk to him and make him understand what you're trying to say, right? Same way, a web service works in the similar manner. How? See, for a web service to communicate, the web services need a WSDL file. A WSDL stands for Web Service Description Language. Web Service Description Language. It is in XML format. It describes the web service. It describes what the web service does, okay? How it can be used, right? So it describes what the web service will do and how it can be used, right? So if you have a WSDL file, it is like you have the number of the guy to whom you want to call, right? And then you need XML. XML is nothing but XML stands for Extended Markup Language, okay? So it is similar to HTML. It is made up of tags and attributes, right? All web services use XML to transport data between them. That is, they use XML as their transport mechanism to communicate the data that they want to communicate with each other, right? Now, the data is represented in XML, and we need the signal, right? We need the signal to carry our voice to our friend, right? So here, two guys are going to be the signal carrying guys. One is SOAP, if it is a SOAP web service, or REST, if it is a REST web service. This guy is going to be having an envelope carrying your data, carrying your XML data. And HTTP is going to be your signal or postman who delivers the data, right? So these are the primary components of a web service, okay? Right? For using a web service, these are the things that are needed for you to understand. First, how to identify a web service. A web service is identified by using the WSDL file, which is a XML file which describes what the web service does and how it can be used. Then you need to communicate with the web service, so you have to transport some data to the web service and get some data from the web service. For that, the data is in the format of XML, and the communication is carried out by using protocols like HTTP, by compressing the data and creating a virtual envelope by using SOAP or REST, okay? SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol, which is another HTML file only, sorry, XML file only, okay? It is just a XML file. It is again a XML file which is going to have your data that should reach your web service, right? And REST stands for Representational State Transfer. It is not a protocol, rather it is an architecture to transfer data. in XML format between web services over HTTP, right? Till now, what we have seen is we have seen the components of a web service, how a web service is identified. It is identified using WSDL file, and how data is communicated to a web service. It is communicated to through XML, and the communication carriers of the data are SoapUI along with HTTP, right? So these are the components. Now, why does it become a challenge to test a web service, right? Let us see a very practical idea. We are going to see a very practical approach on how a simple web service is designed and how it is actually given as a URL to us for testing. Okay, we are going to create a simple web service, and we are going to we will try to call that web service from what do I say? We will try to call that from SoapUI, and we will try to execute it, right? So I'm trying to cover at least up to the point of deploying a web service and showing it to you. So I hope we have time for that. So till now, if there are any questions, please go ahead and ask your questions. We have to really be conscious on time. So any questions till now, please ask me. Okay. Okay, I have a question which says, is the extension of web service is WSDL? Extension of web service is not WSDL. Web service files are recognized by WSDL. Generally, the URL of a web service will have WSDL appended to its end. And I request you to avoid questions that are not relevant to this session. Okay. Okay, someone says, okay, perfect till now. Okay, someone says, good to go ahead. Okay, is SoapUI, SOAP is an XML file? I didn't understand. Okay, yes, SOAP is a XML file. We will be seeing the components of a SOAP message as we go on. REST is other type of. Okay, someone is asking, REST is the other types of tool like SoapUI tool. No, REST is a method of communication between web services. It is defining a class of web services which are not using SOAP as their transfer mechanism. They are just a type of web services which again can be tested using SoapUI. Okay, someone says you used RPC remote process control instead of remote. Sorry, I think I misspelled RPC as remote process control instead of remote procedure call. Thanks for that. And if we create web service using Java, then how we convert into WSDL file? That is a good question. The recent editors like Eclipse have a capability to automatically generate the WSDL file. We can see that when we do it ourselves. What is JUnit framework and what are JUnit framework functions? JUnit is a simple test framework which is based upon Java. It has a lot of annotations and lot of inbuilt functions which will allow you to do testing from any Java editor. That is all I can say for now. Okay, someone says, now I know manual testing, then how I will be able to test this for okay, you can also test web services manually, but you have to do the ping manually, which will be done by SoapUI when you use SoapUI. So we are going to create a sample WSDL file now, and we are going to see how that WSDL file is, how a web service WSDL file is generated. Yes. Okay. Someone is asking which one is the best web service, SOAP or REST. See, SOAP or REST, it really depends upon your case in hand. Okay, so your right now your case in hand, if it is a very traditional function like SOAP, like a weather forecaster or a stock trader web service, or if it is a very standard thing like currency converter, in that case SOAP is enough. But if you are talking about bulk data, large amount of data, then in that case the SOAP messages, which are in XML format, will become very large to handle. It will become very difficult to hold. So in that case, when there is large data involved, it is better to have REST based services. Okay. Okay, could you please explain SOAP or REST envelope? Yes, I'll surely do that. If we create web service using Java, then the question is repeating from the same person. Please do not repeat the same question that I have answered. The Eclipse editor will automatically generate WSDL file. Okay. A web service will either be a SOAP based web service or a REST based web service. It will not be both in most cases. I am asked a question, which version of SoapUI you will be using. I'm using the latest version 4.5.1. Is SoapUI support any other framework other than JUnit? I have worked predominantly with JUnit, and I find it to be satisfactory. Okay. Yeah, so I think this much is done. We are running out of time, so I would like to take up the rest of the questions through mail, because we are running out of time. I have to just wind up. So let us start. I'm just going to show you the WSDL file creation, of how a WSDL file is generated for a simple web service. So I'm going to be using Eclipse. This is not for you to know. This is just to see how a web service is designed, and how it lacks UI coding, which makes it little complex for us to handle. Okay. Right. So I'm just creating a new workspace. Right. So let us quickly do it. It is just a very simple few step process. I'm using Eclipse Juno. It is J2E edition. In case you guys are interested in trying it out, it is Eclipse Juno, Java Enterprise Edition. So the first step is to create a dynamic web project. File, new, dynamic web project, right? So here right, I give a project name. I call it as service 1, and you need a server to deploy your WSDL file. I'm using Tomcat version 7. You can also download the same from Apache Tomcat site. It is again open source. So I'm just clicking on new runtime. I'm selecting Tomcat 7. I'm just browsing the location of that installation in my hard disk. Program files. Yeah. Right. Then I say finish. You can leave the other settings as it is. Follow the path. This will be your root directory. Sorry, this will be your root directory under which all your project contents will fall. Right. So this is how the basic structure will look like. This is totally a developer's job. I'm just doing it to show you how a WSDL file gets generated. I right click on the source folder. Okay, new Java class. I'm just going to create a small calculator service which will just do addition and subtraction. I call it I call this package as pkg. You can give it any name. Just a second. Okay, just give me a second. We missed a step here. Okay, I was supposed to create a package. Right click and say new package. I give my package a name. You can give any name. And on this package, I create a new Java class. I call it as calc. Say finish. Right. So this is going to be my web server skeleton. So here I type at web service. This is a annotation which developers use. It comes with Java's web service class itself. Right. It is inbuilt. And I'm going to have two methods here. One method is for addition. Another method is for one method is for addition, another method is for subtraction. Add int p1. Don't worry about this coding. This is not your part to do. This is just a part of the demo. Right. So same way. Right. Return p1 minus p2. Okay. So I have just developed a small web service with the name calc, right? And I have a web method which is add, which takes two numbers and adds it and returns the sum. Similarly, I have another method called sub, which takes two other numbers and returns the subtracted result of those two numbers. So I save this. This is the web service structure, and I'm going to create one more file which will be the actual server side execution file. Right. So here the steps are very simple. I'm just going to use my Tomcat as my publishing point. That is, it will publish the WSDL file. For those of you who were asking how do you get the WSDL file, here is the answer. Localhost is my machine where I have Tomcat 7. I have downloaded it already. Since this is too technical, I'm not getting into details of this. Slash, I can give a name to my web service, and I have to tell the class which I have created right now that represents my web service. So I say new calc, right? And then just to be intimated, once my service is deployed, I'm going to use this print message saying service created, right? So right now I'm just going to show you how this particular function, this particular class is going to let us get the WSDL file. All that I have to do is I have to right click and say run as Java application. Okay, so my service is created. How do I check if my service is created? I just copy this URL. I come to any browser here. Yeah, I paste this URL. I append the URL with a question mark and say WSDL. If everything has went on fine, you will see that my calculator service would have been deployed on my Tomcat and the WSDL file will be created. See, the thing is, I wanted to do this exercise just to make you understand one thing. For people who have come to testing from a development background, they will know that every functionality that you develop should have something called as a front end or a UI, right? Right now, I don't have a UI. Okay. The code that we just wrote, it does not have any UI at all, right? So this becomes a challenge for a tester like you and me, right? Because when there is UI, you know where to give the input, where to get the output from, right? So this is one important challenge for us as web service tester, right? So what we will be seeing as we move on is, I'm going to save this WSDL URL and keep.